was a shadow in the government's game. Pawn as a child with no face and no name. They stole my past to leave me cold and alone. Always searching for a place I could call home. I was lost in the dark, just a tool in the hand, till she pulled me close and helped me understand. Now the fire inside is starting to rise. I can see the truth through 1,000 lies. Now I tear through the veil, leave holes in the sky. I can read every thought in the blink of an eye. Danica, my witch, she's the magic in me. Yeah, I finally found what they took from me. With a hellhound beside me, I'm standing my ground. No longer a ghost that's never been found. In the dead of the night, I can hear the call. All the ghosts of my past scratching through the wall. My eyes change colors, the power has grown. With Crowley the hound, I'm never alone. I used to be hollow, a man made of glass, but now I am reclaiming every year that has passed. Every memory is falling right back into place. I know every name and I remember every face. Now I tear through the veil, leave holes in the sky. I can read every thought in the blink of an eye. Danica, my witch, she's the magic in me. Yeah, I finally found what they took from me. With a hell beside me, I'm standing my ground. No longer a ghost that's never been found. I ain't running no more, yeah, I'm ready to fight. Gonna settle that debt in the depth of the night. They tried to break me, they tried to erase, but they can't hide the blood from the scars on my face. The veil is thin and the engine is hot. I'm taking back everything that they thought I forgot. Now I tear through the veil, leave holes in the sky. I can read every thought in the blink of an eye. Danica, my witch, she's the magic in me. Yeah, I finally found what they took from me. With a hellhound beside me, I'm standing my ground. No longer a ghost that's never been found. I remember it all now. Every single face, I'm calling for you in the dead of the night.
Good evening, everybody. If you're new to the channel, welcome. If you're one that's been following the channel, welcome to you too. Thanks for watching, and tonight I'm going to show you, or tell you about some of the mind games they used to play on me, and how they kept an eye on me without me knowing about it until it was too late. Well, there was a new kid come to school, and, you know, we was all poor back in those days. But this kid was really just, seemed like bad luck just was always around this kid. Well, that first day of this kid being in school, he was in my class, and teacher had him up there talking to him, and then she stood up and stood beside the boy and had him introduce himself, his name, and she proceeded to say that he lived there in that little village where our school was. And I live kind of outside of the village, you know, not very far, but bike riding distance. Well, I kind of wanted to kind of take him, I guess, under my wing, and he looked like he was pretty down on his luck. I mean, not trying to be mean, but he really looked like he needed a friend, so I tried to get along with everybody. And in school, I talked about everybody. Didn't make a difference if they was rich, poor, what category society put them in. I could find the good in them. And that's how I managed to do school. But this kid, nobody wanted to sit by him. Well, there was a empty seat there beside me, and he walked around looking, and, you seen the little things, like where they put their arm on the chair, or set their books in the chair, like, move on, move on. So I hurried across the room. I says, empty seat over here. He come over and sat down and stuck his hand out, shook his hand, and told him my name. I said, well, looks like we're bunkies. He just kind of laughed, and he said, it's hard being a new kid in school. I said, yeah, that's okay. I said, there is some you don't want to hang around with, and some that will come back around. Just give them time. Well, he was really a good kid at heart, but life just wasn't on his parents' side and on his side, so that's not their fault or his fault. Shit happens. And it seems like society, back then and even today, so when you're in a run of bad luck, whether it be financially or whatever the case may be, society likes to try to step on you when you're down and keep you there. They don't want to see you succeed. And that was the case with this kid and his parents. And his parents were, let's just say, quite colorful. They drank, they fought with each other, and this poor kid was stuck in a household where sometimes he'd go out to the shed in the backyard and sleep just to get away from the parents. Well, I kind of knew what that was like. So that was one thing we had in common. A good start. Well, we sat there in class and listened to the teacher, and the first recess we went out, and I showed him around the playground out there and showed him the boundaries, unless a ball gets kicked over the fence out there in that field, don't go over there. That's private property. But if a ball goes over there, there was a crossing that you go across. I said, but otherwise don't just go over there because we'll get in trouble. So we sat out there, and a couple other kids in my class come over and started talking to me, and next thing you know, they started to speak to him. He was kind of shy at first. Didn't say too often much, but if he was spoken to, he'd speak back. He's a person of few words. Well, the more time I spent around him, the more I kept an eye out and tried to steer him out of trouble. keep the other kids from picking on him. And it just seemed like he just sailed under a dark cloud. But I tried, stuck up for him quite a few times. And when he was accused of things, I would stand up in his behalf. But this kid, it was funny, it's kind of funny. He, even when he didn't do something, but he got accused of it, instead of him just being quiet, he'd say something kind of smart ass, you know. And that just made the hole even deeper. Like, why do you do that? Well, he told me. He said, because they already expect that I stole the milk money. I said, well, did you? No, I didn't. I said, you know anything about it? Yeah. Well, who did it? He told me, and I was like, you know this, and yet you're taking the blame. Then you smart off and put yourself even deeper in that mud hole. He goes, that's what they expect. I said, but it don't have to be like that. Tell them the truth. I don't want to get nobody else in trouble. Like, man, there's no helping you then. I said, but you want to be in trouble, okay. I said, but I think if I was you, I'd just go tell them who did it. I'll go with you, I'll back you up. Nope. He took his whipping. He worked down in the cafeteria, and they made it even worse because the two ladies down there that was running the kitchen, the cooks, they didn't give him no ease up either. I mean, they was on him like stink on shit. Watched every move he made. Like, I don't know what I can do to help him. The whole school year was like that. I mean, I guess it was kind of like, well, if you're going to blame me, I'll go ahead and take the blame for it. Never did understand it, but that was his mentality. Well, through that school year, I still hung around him, tried to keep him out of trouble. And like I said, he really wasn't a bad kid. Instead of him trying to dig himself out of the hole, he'd grab a shovel full of dirt and put it on top of his head. Like, it didn't make no damn sense. Later, it'll make sense, though. Well, one night, after school, went home, and of course my dad come home pretty sauced up. He'd stopped and signed up at a few bars, and signed up like in drinking, and signed up, that he was there. That was just an excuse to say that he was just sitting there drinking beer. Well, we was over at the neighbor lady's house because it started getting dark, and he wasn't home yet, so I was over there. And she wasn't going to let me leave until my dad or mom got home. Well, mom wasn't going to be home until 12:30. So finally about 9:30, Dad's truck went past and pulled over at the house, and I said, well, I'll go ahead and just walk over there, and the pole lights are on, I can see. She was like, no. I'm watching you because there wasn't nobody home. between here and there, you get run over by a car, I feel like I'm responsible. I'll call him, tell him he can just walk over here, knock on the door, and he can get you. Otherwise, when my kids go to bed, you go to bed with them. She was a little short German woman. I wasn't going to argue with her. I seen what she done to her grandkids. She get the old razor strap out and lay one on you. So she went and called on the phone, and my dad must have said something kind of smart when he was drinking. She goes, "Sir, are you coming over and getting him or not?" I don't know what the answer was, but it must have been pretty smart ass. And she goes, "If you ain't here within 45 minutes and my grandkids go to bed, he'll be in there in bed with them, and I'll send him home in the morning." Well, I couldn't hear what my dad was saying, but it must have been pretty foul. She sat there for a minute, listened to him. When he's done, she goes, "And I'm going to tell you one thing. You will never give me a cussing or talk down to me. I don't care if you are drinking. Maybe he should just stay here tonight, because it sounds like you're pretty sauced up." She goes, "So if you come over here to get your son, you best be on your best behavior," because she said, "I'll reach to that screen and snatch you bald." And she meant it. Well, about 10-15 minutes passed, and there was a knock on the door, and I started to go to the door, and she goes, "No. Get back in the living room." She opened the inside door, and there was a screen door between her and the person on the outside of it, which was my dad. I was sitting there in the room listening. I knew he was going to be pissed. He called her by name and said, can you send him out?" She goes, "You going to straighten up and fly right?" "Yep." So she hollered at me, and I went in there and got my little bag. She opened up the door, and she grabbed my dad by the shoulder, and she goes, "Look, I don't know what you've been doing, and it ain't none of my business. But I know there's times when you're home by about 4:30, 5 o'clock. Shouldn't ought to be leaving that little boy over there. Luckily, he's got enough sense that he walks over here." My dad just stared at her, give her a look, and if looks could kill, she'd have been dead. He was understood. She goes, "Now I'd appreciate it. You take that little boy home and let him get some sleep." Well, we headed over toward the house, and I headed for the door to the house. Dad goes, "Hop in the truck." I looked back across the road there, and that old woman was in that window at her house peeking out watching. Like, oh, hell. But it was my dad that had to do what he said. I opened the door in the truck, put my bag in the floorboard, and got in, and we headed through that roadway there, old gravel roadway there, that old alley, and come to the blacktop that led toward the village. So he pulled out there, and for a drunk guy, he could drive pretty good. I was pretty impressed. Well, about halfway between that, where we turned off onto the blacktop headed toward the village, there was a cemetery. It's on the left-hand side of the road. Well, in this village, there was 2 taverns and a American Legion. And I figured that's what we was going there for, so he could get some beer. Well, this kid I'd been telling you about, I didn't know exactly where he lived. But we pulled in there in the alley, go into the American Legion, and these 2 people growing up was fighting in the yard. I mean, fist fighting, man and a woman, husband and wife. There was blood running down both of them, and hair in each one of them's hands, and must have been a real humdinger. As soon as we pulled in and stopped, I was watching. Here come that boy. I won't use his name because I don't have his permission to. He's like, "What are you guys doing?" I said, "I guess my dad's going to come here and get some beer." Dad goes, "Who's that?" I said, "It's a kid I go to school with. He's a new kid." He goes, "What the hell's going on over there in that yard?" And the kid said, "Oh, it's my parents. They got drunk, started fighting. Cops will be here shortly." Now, don't ask me why, but my dad he had a soft spot for kids other than me. So he told that kid, he said, "You had anything to eat?" And the boy said, "No." They started fighting before we get supper. And he said the food that was in the pan that was going to be cooked ended up all over the walls. He said, "Well, you like pizza?" The boy said, "Yeah." He said, "Well, why don't you come into American Legion with us? I'll order a pizza." And he said, "You boys could go over there in that little dining part over there where the pool table and stuff are and sit at the table there and nobody bother you. Anybody does, come tell me." That boy, he was more glad to get away from that fighting over there. Well, we followed my dad in, and the woman tending bar, older lady, and she was a real nice lady. I always liked her. We called her Old Butter. Well, there was a reason for that. In the summer, she kind of, I wouldn't say fat, but she was just a little plump. And in the summertime, she'd sweat. I mean, sweat up a storm. Her hair got wet, sweat beads running. And she'd always tell everybody that she was so fat she'd melt like butter in the summer. So they nicknamed her Butter. She could be a grouchy old heifer sometimes, but she was a good old soul. She just raised rough. I guess kind of like me and the new kid there. She goes, you know, you kids are going to have to go sit in the other room there to eat that pizza at them tables, and you got to be quiet in there." "That's no problem, Butter. We'll be good." She goes, "I know you will. Your dad kicked your ass." I said, "Yeah, I see it with me." She looked at him and she goes, "I expect the same out of you." He looked at her and he goes, "Yes, ma'am." So she brought us our soda and we was sitting there talking. They're in the pool room. That's where they also had their meetings and stuff, but they had tables in there we sitting at, talking. She brought us our pizza, and I only eat about 3 pieces. That's all I could eat. This kid act like he hadn't eaten in a week. He's like a ravenous dog. He eats the rest of that pizza. I was like, Jesus Christ. That poor kid's gonna be bloated. He got done and he said, take me in there where your dad's at. You gotta go to the bathroom or what? No. So I piled everything up on that big tray, and as we went out, I threw the napkins and stuff in the trash can there, and the pizza cardboard. Took the tray back into Butter, and I said, thanks, Butter. That was good. She said, well, all I did was throw it in the pizza cooker. It was just frozen pizza. I said, well, it was good anyway. He walked over there, and I seen him take his hand like this here, and I was like, oh, shit. And before he touched my dad, I grabbed him by the hand, and I said, man, don't do that. He'll think it's me and turn around and knock the hell out of you. He said, well, how the hell you get his attention? I said, hold on, I'll holler at him. So I waited for him to get done breaking the talking there. I said, Dad. He turned, yeah, what? You guys need another soda or what? I said, well, yeah. I said, but my friend here's got something he wants to say. He looked at my dad and stuck his hand out and said his name. And he goes, thanks. He said, I just knew I wasn't going to get nothing to eat until tomorrow at noon at school. My dad goes, are you kidding me? No, sir. He said, well, Butter will bring you guys the sodas in there and wait in there. I'll be in there in a minute. I was like, what the hell's he up to? So, here come Butter with our 2 sodas. Dad was following behind. He goes, Butter, I know kids aren't supposed to be in here without a guardian or a parent, a grown-up. She goes, I don't make the rules, that's just the rules. He goes, well, let me ask you a question. That door over there go outside? She goes, yeah. He said, well, this kid here sometimes probably has to go to bed without food. Oh, Butter's eyes teared up. She goes, what can I do to help? Dad, I want you to figure out for 7 days how much a pizza, a hamburger, how much money do I need to leave? And every day you throw him in either a hamburger or a pizza, whatever he wants. And I'll just leave the cash here and it'll pay for it. Kind of rough over there. Don't want to see the boy go hungry. She goes, here's what I can do. You come in the door that you come to that door and said, you holler, open the door and holler at me. And she said, go around to the other side, that room. And I'll unlock that door and you can go in there and sit. And she said, I'll bring your pizza in there and I'll shut the door behind me. That way, nobody will know you're in there. When you're done, just leave your stuff there on the tray and on the table. And on your way out, just lock the door. Yeah, that boy had a smile from ear to ear. So, after a couple hours, he started getting tired and he said, well, there ain't nobody home. I think cops probably took Mom and Dad. I'm going to go over there and go to bed. That's what I'll see you tomorrow at school. Well, went home. Several weeks went by and same thing, you know. And it got closer and closer to this kid. Well, I went to bed one night. These two guys showed up inside the house, just staring. As I seen them start to head out, I took off running down the hallway and got Dad. Told him, two guys in the house. When he got up, the front door was standing wide open. So he walked around the yard, looked around at the neighbor, didn't see nothing. We never kept our doors locked back then. Well, that night he made sure them doors locked. Well, it went on a couple of weeks. Of course, I'd been talking to this boy. Not telling him anything exactly, but just kind of easing into what was going on. But I thought I could trust him. Well, a couple weeks passed, and my uncle, he'd got married to a lady a lot younger than him. I know when I say the age, there's probably going to be some people like gasp, but things were different back then. She was 15, and he was 22. I know, cradle robbing. But anyway, she was real nice. Well, he was kind of a squirrel. Horse thief, what my dad used to call him. And my mom's second to youngest brother. He was a wild card. He was funny as hell, but he was a wild card back in his days. Always into some kind of mischief. But according to him, it was never his fault. You had to keep an eye on him. He pulled some slick shit. Well, anyway, something had happened, and he'd worked for a pig farmer, and the pig farmer fired him, and of course, the place they was living was on that farm, and the trailer was his boss's. He was just living there. Well, whatever happened, got him kicked out. So they come down to stay with us till they figure out what the hell they're going to do. We was asleep on the floor one night. Sound asleep. Heard the front door open. I was like, I know Dad locked that. Sounded like somebody shuffled around in the kitchen. So I thought, well, maybe it's Dad up. He had a bad habit, getting up and raiding the refrigerator in his underwear. Yeah, he did. But anyway, we was laying there asleep. I wasn't asleep, but everybody else was. Some couldn't really make out any features. But this guy, I'm assuming it's a guy, come in where we was sleeping. Me and my aunt and uncle. There was a chair above my head there in the living room. I was laying there and I just rolled my eyes up and looked. Seen something in that guy's hand. He stepped over again, and my head was right below that chair. This person, I soon realized what that was in his hand. It was a gun. I don't know if it was a shotgun or a rifle. I couldn't tell how big the barrel was, but I could see that barrel shining. That gun was aimed right down between my eyes. I was hoping that guy didn't really realize that that gun was pointed straight at my eyes. That he maybe just had it laying in his lap, and that's where the barrel ended up. Man, I was afraid to move. I was scared to breathe and let him hear me. Because if he knew I was awake, he might have just shot me, thinking I could have fingered who he was. I laid there for about an hour, and the whole time that damn barrel was stuck right here in front of my face. He just sat back in the chair. Like I said, I couldn't. It's dark. Couldn't really. I could make out his outline. I couldn't see nothing definitive. After about 2 hours, the guy must have fell asleep in that damn chair, because the gun barrel slid down and was rested on the floor on top of the pillow where I was at. It was poked into that pillow. Like, I hope the fuck he don't hit that trigger. So I took my elbow and nudged my aunt a good one. Put my hand over her mouth, pointed up. She's kind of turned her head a little bit and looked up. Needless to say, the bed got real warm and real wet real quick. She literally pissed everywhere. Scared the piss plumb out of her. She elbowed my uncle. My uncle sitting there looking. All of a sudden, this guy gets up and starts running. Well, my dad comes out of there. They chase this person out the room. A few weeks later, I was telling this kid about it. A couple days after that, I got pulled back to the project, and they told me, they said, you need to keep your fucking mouth shut next time that somebody pulled the trigger. It was somebody they sent. Well, I learned to keep my mouth shut real quick. That kid left school, never did ever see him again. So was it somebody they sent to school to be friends with me to find out? Probably. Well, I'll catch you on the next one. Thank you. Good night.